I feel like I have to clarify, this beard is not red, it is brown. Please remember that. Hey kids, welcome back to the channel. I am Uncle Frank and I hope that you are having a great day. The other day, I put out a video titled The End of a TCG, where I went over some factors that could lead to exactly that, the end of a TCG, or at the very least, a significant dwindling of its player population. In the days since, there's been a bit of a chatter on my channel, both in the comments section and just some Discord combos I've had, where people have been curious about the state of certain card games. And I figured this was a broad enough subject that I could have a more nebulous conversation here in a single video going over the health of the big three TCGs, Magic the Gathering, Yu-Gi-Oh, and Pokemon, all in one video just to give you guys my thoughts on the current situation with each of these card games. Now, before we begin, I just want to put out a disclaimer. These are just my own thoughts. I do not have the ability to see into the future. I have been wrong about several of my predictions over the last few years. I have been right about some, but when it comes to guessing about the future, all you can do is make an educated guess to the best of your abilities. That's what I will try to do here. Also, keep in mind that these opinions can change as time goes on. There could be some development in the Magic world, the Yu-Gi-Oh world, or the Pokemon world that can cause me to change my opinions in regards to how I feel about those TCGs and their future prospects. But with all of that said, let's get into it. We are going to start with the one I have the least to say about. That was a weird sentence there. Pokemon. The Pokemon TCG. Of the major three TCGs, it is probably in the best position of them. I do not think there is any real need to be concerned about the future of Pokemon. I firmly believe that Pokemon boxes are an excellent item to buy and sit on for years. I believe Pokemon singles have some of the best chances of appreciation on the secondary market, and I believe Pokemon as both a game and a collectible will have not significant, but a sizable room for growth over the next 5 to 10 years. And here's why. So, while there are grumblings in the Pokemon world, it's important to remember that Pokemon is a generational IP, and it's one of the largest intellectual properties on the planet. In fact, I think it's like the largest IP in the world by some measurements. And when you look at Pokemon, you kind of have to treat it differently from the other TCGs, just because it's not just a TCG. It's kind of its own force. And as a result of how huge and popular it is and how wide its potential player base is, its wider reach, you have to kind of consider that over the next few years, Pokemon's probably going to be in as good a position as it is now, perhaps even better. Now, that's not to say that the Pokemon Company can't release several dud sets in a row, but just look at what we have going on right now. We've had several decent sets in the Scarlet Violet era. Surging Sparks is looking to be an extremely popular set. There's a Team Rocket set coming out just around the corner, an Eevee set coming out just around the corner. So for the immediate future, Pokemon looks pretty good. And for the long term, there's kids who have been growing up with Pokemon their entire lives, who have parents that have grown up with Pokemon their entire lives. So I think the long term of Pokemon is going to be pretty good too, because as I said before, this is a generational game, and it's going to have players and collectors for a long time, as long as they don't drop the ball. And I don't see them doing that in the near future, at the very least. Drink water. Next, I'm going to talk about the problem child. That boy, Magic the Gathering. Of the three card games that are considered the big three, I believe that Magic has the highest chance of failure in the future. I do not believe, that Magic the Gathering is going to die in any real way within the next 5 years. Okay? However, I do believe that it is in one of the worst spots it's ever been in its entire 30-year run. Okay? As you may know, I am a pessimist when it comes to my outlook regarding Magic the Gathering, and this has a lot to do with how tired I am of Wizards of the Coast as a company, how often they just debase their own card game, subject it to things like Universes Beyond, terrible print quality, overprinting, and just all kinds of terrible gimmicks. There's a lot that can be said about how poorly Magic the Gathering is mismanaged, which does really make me sad to think about. After all, Magic is probably one of the best card games out there in terms of its just base quality. Unfortunately, it's being managed by a company that hates the card game, hates the players, and is very eager to trade in everything they've worked for over the last 3 decades for a bit of that SpongeBob dollar. And it's just something that I'm really upset about overall. I'm not going to harp on it too long, but I just want to say that between the people upset about how the meta game of various formats has kind of evolved, to the people who are very upset with how Magic is less about Magic and more about Universes Beyond now, to the people who are very upset about the story, and to the people who are very, very upset about how their collections lose value day after day. There's a lot of negativity in the Magic ecosystem that was not there 5 years ago, you know. And as I said before, I am a pessimist, but usually I was a pessimist amongst optimists. Usually when I voice my opinions about Magic Online over the last few years, I have been shouted out or mocked or just outright ignored by people who have been willing to jump over all kinds of obstacles to defend Wizards of the Coast. That has not been the case in the last week or so after these huge announcements from Wizards, especially the SpongeBob Universes Beyond. There's been just so much negativity. Again, I don't think it's going to die in the immediate future. Now, I don't think it's too big to fail, but there is just some things to be optimistic about. I mean, there's Foundations. I've been keeping a close eye on the Foundations set, and I'm more optimistic about that set than I was when it was first announced. After all, a set that's legal in Standard for 5 years is something to be a bit worried about, but I've been looking at the cards. They look really good. I'm very optimistic about the reception that the Foundations Jumpstart product is going to receive, especially with all those anime cards. People are going to really like that. If they can make Foundations a balanced set that other sets can piggyback off of in order to build a healthy Standard environment, that will go a long way towards making Standard the central format that Magic has needed it to be for a long time. Yes, I am worried that they can drop the ball with this set, but from what I've seen so far, it looks very promising, and that on its own is a little glimmer of hope for Magic's near future. With that said, as I said previously, I think of the 3 TCGs, Magic has currently the weakest grip on a promising future. But let's not waste too much time talking about my negative opinions towards Magic and move on. Which finally brings us to Yu-Gi-Oh! Now, Yu-Gi-Oh! Is in a really strange position because there is a lot of negativity for Yu-Gi-Oh! Online, but there's also a lot of positivity. I'm going to cover these each in one quick go. There's a lot of people who are very angry about the current state of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Metagame. There's people who are upset about its secondary market, and then there's people who are upset about Konami as a company. On the positive side, there are people who are really excited about the 25th anniversary celebration that's been going on for what feels like a very long time now, 2 years almost. There's people who are very excited to be collecting a lot of these older Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards that are starting to appreciate as collector's items. And there's also people who are really getting into retro Yu-Gi-Oh! Formats, which is just, I love that. I love seeing all these people online who are talking about getting into Go to Netison. And I'm absolutely excited to see if those formats will grow to become the main way people play Yu-Gi-Oh! I don't think they will, but I'm optimistic that they might, which is just really exciting. On the negative side of things, I need to stress that a lot of the common complaints people have about Yu-Gi-Oh! And Konami as a company are complaints that players have had for the entirety of the game's existence over in the TCG. When it comes to poorly balanced metagames, that's always been an issue. When it comes to terrible secondary market collectability, that's always been kind of an issue. There's always been a major reprint of the most playable cards. There's been dozens of examples of cards that have come out being the most powerful cards ever with a huge price tag attached to them at first and then suddenly lose most of their value. You know, there's a lot of people who were complaining earlier this year about Bonfire, for example. And to those people, I say, look, I remember when Dark Armed Dragon first got printed. So this is really nothing new to me. Just wait 6 months for the reprint, and I guarantee you're going to have a fine time. And lo and behold, Bonfire got reprinted, to the surprise of absolutely nobody. To talk about the positive side of things, the 25th anniversary collection, I said 30th earlier, the 25th anniversary collection is one of the coolest products from any card game ever. Just straight up reprinting the first few sets of your TCG, making them available at set prices, so you could buy a Blue Eyes pack for the same price as any other Yu-Gi-Oh pack, is amazing. And giving people who have never had the chance to buy those old boxes the opportunity to do so is just really cool, in my opinion. I thought that was absolutely amazing. However, there's a lot of fatigue for the 25th anniversary stuff. Bonanza's coming out very, very soon, and it's got a huge pool of retro cards that are getting their quarter-century secret rare printings, and there's a lot to be excited about there, but there's also a lot of people in the community, especially certain collectors, who are just kind of tired of it. They're sick of all the quarter-century crap. They want to move on and get other cards in their collection rather than this 25th anniversary stamp, and that's totally fine. Fatigue is a normal part of any hobby. But I feel like if it's going on for 2 years, it's probably not just the 25th anniversary celebration anymore. And that's the thing, it has been going on for a while. But to stay focused, all I want to say is that Yu-Gi-Oh! Is between Pokemon and between Magic. It's not doing amazing right now, but it's not doing terrible. And it has the benefit of a larger potential audience because there's a lot of people who grew up with Yu-Gi-Oh! Who entered their professional lives and had a lot of income, which led to a lot of these retro cards suddenly spiking in price over the last few years, over the last half decade or so. A lot of retro cards have become highly collectible items. That's going to happen again. You know, people have talked about how Duel Monsters, GX, and 5Ds cards have all been exploding in price and how they're all super collectible. I don't think 5Ds is the cutoff. And I'm going to say something really controversial here. Here's my controversial opinion. I think Zexal cards are going to be very collectible in the near future. There is no doubt in my mind that there are people who grew up watching Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal, thinking that that show was amazing, even if I personally think it was terrible. And now that they're entering the workforce, now that they have some disposable income, they're going to want some of those cards. It's just what I believe firmly. I think that is going to happen. I think people who are holding on to some Zexal cards are going to be very happy in the next few years. Conversely, I think there's a lot of modern sets that aren't doing too great, so, you know, Yu-Gi-Oh! Might not be the best place to park your money. I still think it's Pokemon. Pokemon's just doing so good right now, and it might do good for the near future, but yeah, I think Yu-Gi-Oh! Is going to do fine. Not amazing, but not terribly. Just fine. And that's really it. Those are my thoughts on the three major TCGs. I'm very disappointed in Magic. I'm okay with Yu-Gi-Oh! Pokemon's doing great. So if you think any of those TCGs are going to fail and die in the near future, I disagree. I think they're all going to do fine for now until something major happens and Magic flushes down the toilet because of something stupid Wizards does. But hey, let me know your thoughts below. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Do you think I'm crazy? Regardless, I want to know. If you enjoyed this video, please consider leaving a like, subscribing, sharing with a friend, all that jazz. And remember, your uncle needs to get healthy, so leave a like, because for every like this video gets, I'll be doing a push-up in the next one. See you later. My last video got 25 likes. That's 25.